Now, the selfish individual inside of me says, stay in your city. Enjoy your suburbia. Stay there. Leave the rural areas alone because I want it to stay rural. And the more people that leave the city and come out to the country, the less country the country becomes. Hey friends, welcome back. I am Jason. I've done some videos on urban survival, suburban survival type videos, and I get a lot of comments on them, various comments, differing opinions. For example, some people will say things like the suburban areas are kind of like the Goldilocks zone. It's not too urban, it's not too rural, and it's just perfect for survival in an SHTF situation. Now, I think that there's some argument to go to that because when you are in a rural situation like where I live, you're kind of on your own. Yeah, I know my neighbors and I know the people around me, and I don't have a lot of neighbors. We're kind of spread out, obviously, because that's kind of the definition of rural. But I know most of my neighbors, at least the ones that are close by to me. And in urban areas, that's not always the case. In urban areas, for example, if you live in an urban area, do you know all of your neighbors, the people in your immediate vicinity? Chances are probably not. A lot of people, especially in my experience, because I never lived in a big city, but I've definitely lived in suburban areas for a while. And I guess I did live in a city for a little while, a smaller city. And I didn't know all my neighbors. I didn't know all the people that lived in the apartments around me when I moved in there. People just, go to work. They come home, they park in the parking garage, they get in the elevator, they go to their apartment, and they close the door, and they isolate themselves in a lot of situations. I'm not saying that's the case for you. I'm not saying that's the case for everybody, but oftentimes we just don't know our neighbors. So survivability in an urban area, I think, is going to be really, really difficult if tough times should come upon us, like that SHTF situation that a lot of people like to talk about. What that actually is going to be, that's not what this video is about. Who knows what that's actually going to look like. But what I do know is that in an urban area, you're going to have a lot more competition for resources, just simply because there's a whole lot more people crammed into that tiny little area. And there's only limited amount of resources to be had. And if for some reason the supply flow should slow down, should stop potentially, people are going to be competing for those items that are on the grocery store shelves, for example. And that's going to get pretty ugly, pretty nasty, pretty fast if that's the case, because we all know, and it's unfortunate, it's really unfortunate and sad that people are just selfish, and people are, they look out for themselves, they look out for their families first, and I'm not saying that's necessarily wrong. I'm saying it is wrong if you are willing to hurt innocent people around you to get what you want. I just don't think that that's right. I would rather starve than, hurt the dad across the street that's trying to provide for his family, and take what he has. I don't think so. I just don't think. I'm not saying that I'm above it. I'm not saying that I wouldn't do these things if I saw my kids starving. I'm not saying I'm any better than anybody watching. But I'd like to think that I've got my morals and my, I'd like to think I can control my emotions and control my actions a little bit better than that. Gosh, that's nasty. We gotta flush that. I think that it's gonna be a lot easier. Well, obviously I think it's gonna be easier. That's why I live in a rural area. I think it's gonna be a lot easier for people living in rural areas to produce their own foods. I think that probably goes without being said, because people that live in urban areas don't produce anything, really. I mean, what do you do if you live in an urban area? Yes, you have jobs and you do labor of some sort. You produce something, perhaps, but maybe it's not tangible. You're not producing food. You're not producing any kind of real tangible items. living in those urban areas, most likely, for the majority of people. I'm not saying that's for everybody. But the people that are in the rural areas, the farmers and such, those are the ones that are producing things. And it's going to be much easier for those people in rural areas to produce the food that they need, water that they need. What are you going to do in an urban area for water? I mean, that's going to be probably the number one thing that gets most people is a lack of quality, clean water. It's going to get tainted and dirty and used up and polluted in all sorts of ways, and it's going to be very difficult. Do you even have access to water if you live in an urban area, suburban area? It's really tough. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm just saying it's going to be tough. Getting around in cities and urban areas when difficult times come, like the apocalypse, you know, when that happens, how are you going to get around? If the SHTF occurs, whatever that may be, getting around town, a city like New York, for example, is going to be next to impossible, with the exception of walking, maybe a bicycle, that might help. But even then, it's going to become a lot more dangerous. I could drive this tractor to town right now if I wanted to. How'd that get bent? Coolant in my radiator is gross for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on there. But this got bent. I don't know how that happened. I'm gonna have to fix that somehow. Suburban areas, I don't think, are really much better, you know, as far as being prepared. I mean, how many people in suburban areas have gardens and can grow food, have their own wells, can produce their own water? That sort of thing. I just think it's going to be much more difficult. And like I said before, competition in that suburban area is just going to be really intense, at least, especially in the beginning. And let's say we get into a situation where the laws no longer apply. Which places are going to be the most dangerous to get around? It's definitely going to be those urban and suburban areas, you know, people that have just been waiting for opportunities to do the wrong things. In their eyes, the right things, just waiting for those opportunities. Those people are going to come out and they're going to be celebrating in a lot of really dangerous ways. And I think that those suburban, urban areas are going to become very, very difficult to get by. How easy would it be for somebody up in the wood line that I can't see with a 22 just take me out right now? It'd be very simple. I could do it to myself. I mean, if it was me versus me, it'd be no problem. It would be no problem whatsoever. But I guess the same could be said about those suburban and urban areas. But there's a lot more eyes around, a lot more eyeballs watching. Perhaps people be, I don't know. I think without the rule of law, I think that they'll be taking advantage of those situations and be dropping people left and right. And that's really, really sad, just to get what they want, you know, or just for the fun of it. People, it's crazy, you know. Saw a report of somebody just getting run over by a truck the other day, and it was just for fun, basically, just because they could. Difficult to have livestock like chickens in suburban and definitely urban areas. These chickens are probably the best because they can lay eggs, obviously, and then you can eat them if they stop laying eggs for some reason. So, and they just walk around, and they almost never have to feed them. I almost never feed my chickens. I just let them free range. They get picked off by predators from time to time, but for the most part, they're getting by. Wet grass, I love it. If I got a smaller bucket. My wife doesn't like my collection of buckets, you know, but I love 5-gallon buckets. They're just so dang handy. You sit on them, you fill them with stuff. They're fantastic. I don't know what she's got against my bucket collection. Here we go. Nice small bucket right there. All right, let's get this one. You know, and a lot of people worry about, you know, government lockdowns and, you know, the man coming down with this boot, you know. And it's going to be really difficult, I think, in rural areas to enforce a lot of those, you know, unjust type rules, in my opinion. I think that we're so spread out here. It'd just be next to impossible to get people to abide. Not impossible. I mean, a lot of people will still, even in rural areas, a lot of people will still, you know, cave out of fear, and they'll still do as they're told no matter what. A lot of people are just, no matter where you live, a lot of people are just waiting to be told what to do. Regardless, you know, regardless of what it is, they just long for someone to tell them what to do and how to live their lives. Just tell me what I should eat. Tell me when I can go out. Keep me safe. Before I forget, guys, before my gas overflows here, if you haven't become a Survival Dispatch Insider, click the link in the description and check it out. I think it may be worth your while. I'll put a short video at the end of this video, a short clip at the end of this video about becoming a Survival Dispatch Insider. And I'm in no way saying that life is going to be easy in rural areas. That's definitely not the case. If hard times should come upon our country as a whole, for example, life will become much more difficult everywhere, no matter where you are. I'm just saying that it's going to be, you're going to be more free to do what you need to do if there's a lot less people surrounding you. Now, let's say that a lot of people think that if hard times should come, that these urban areas, there's going to be this mass exodus, and everyone's just going to be fleeing the cities and heading out to somewhere, you know, to the rural areas. And perhaps, you know, I think that will be the case in some situations. Some people will leave, but a lot of people will stay and do what they've been doing. They'll continue to try to, they'll stay where they'll stay in places that they're familiar with. They won't leave their homes just because things have gotten difficult, because the grass is not necessarily greener on the other side. You know, where will you go? If you're in this urban metropolis and suddenly times get really tough, you're just going to pack your slap your bug out bag on your back and just start trucking? Maybe, you know, if it's immediately very, very dangerous in your area, and if you don't go right now, you're going to die, then yes, that would be a very smart move. But just because times get difficult doesn't mean that everyone's just going to up and leave and hope for something better somewhere else. I mean, I think that will be the case in some situations, but I don't think everyone's just going to leave the cities. I think a lot of people will form groups, and they'll scavenge, and they'll prey upon the weaker ones, and hopefully in some situations there'll be some good come from that, and people will group together and do things for the benefit of the community. I'm hopeful, at least. In a past video, someone mentioned the situation in Venezuela when their economy collapsed. You know, they went from boom to bust pretty quick. They were, you know, something like the third wealthiest nation in the world for a very brief period of time, based on their oil industry. I don't know if they have the number one, but it's really high oil reserves in their country. So they've got a lot of petroleum there, and that's where they made all their money. But they went from boom to bust really, really quickly, and everything just collapsed, and it turned into chaos really fast. And someone mentioned in the comments, and I don't know how true this is because it depends on where you get your information from, but they said that the people in the suburban type areas, or urban areas, did better. They fared better during these situations than the people in the rural areas. The people in the rural areas just got picked off. You know, the roaming mobs of gangs and whatever took care of them pretty quick and took all their resources. And that may be true in that situation, but where we live, it's a totally different place. You know, is the same situation going to occur? Absolutely not. It's not going to be the same circumstances. It's not going to be exactly the same situations. Different culture of people, everything's just different. So we can't necessarily, we can learn from that, and we can take information from that and make assessments, make decisions based upon the information that we have and things that have happened in the past. But we can't 100% assume that exactly that same situation is going to happen here, and you're going to be safer in suburbia than you will be in a rural area because of it. I just don't think that that's going to be the case here. So back in the spring, I planted this 4x4 garden, and I'm just now harvesting. I've got about maybe 15 pounds of butternut squash out of it. It's a 4x4 square. It was a challenge, 4 feet by 4 feet square that you had to do with virgin soil, just the grass here on the ground. Plant what you could plant and see what you can get out of it without having to go buy anything. No fertilizers, nothing like that. So I planted sweet potatoes, I planted butternut squash, regular potatoes, which didn't grow at all for some reason. But the sweet potatoes have grown well. I don't know if I've got any potatoes, but the plants look pretty good. Now, I'll be the first to tell you that it's a whole lot easier to go out to the store and buy food, right? A whole lot easier. But what happens one day when that's no longer an option? What happens then? Having a piece of dirt like this, even the small little garden right here, produce some food. I'm still pulling them out, but as you can see, and that's not even the butternut squash that I've already harvested. So with 4 feet by 4 feet of grass, basically, I was able to grow, I don't know, probably 30 pounds of food. I don't know what that equates in calories, but with a bigger section, a bigger plot of land, you could grow even more. Can you do that in suburbia? Some of your backyards, perhaps. Can you do that in the urban areas? Unlikely. We're getting ready for a big fall fiesta at our place. And that's another thing. People think that you have to live in urban, suburban type areas in order to be where the people are, to be near all of these activities that you enjoy doing, like the festivals and all that stuff. And that's fine. And we have to drive a little ways to go do that kind of stuff if that's what we want to do. But build it and they will come sort of deal. So my property, the On3 habitat here, that's what it's all about. That's what it's for. It's for sharing with other people. And we love having people over. And that's why I'm cleaning up and clearing the brush by the creek and making the place look a bit more presentable. Not that it's necessary, but you know how it is when you have people over. But we can have that community. We can have those. We can have that community. We can have those friends. We can have that big family. Even if you're not in that urban, suburban type area. We can do that in a rural area just as easy, maybe even easier. I don't know. There's no noise ordinances and stuff like that out here. You can just get after it. I'm not sure exactly what it is, the appeal of living in urban areas. I guess the convenience, and people like to be able to walk to restaurants and all that kind of stuff. I guess I get that, but and living out here, having property, owning property is a lot of work to maintain it and to actually make it produce something. If you just let it sit there, it's not really that much work, actually. But if you wanted to do something for you, it is a lot of work to maintain it. And I get that. But if you're willing to put in the work, the property will produce for you. It can produce food for you. It can produce a place for a community. It can do a lot for you. And I think most people are just too happy and too comfortable going to work, whatever, or if they even work. A lot of people that live in urban areas, are reliant upon the government for aid. A lot of people in country areas, rural areas, people don't. Some of the poorest people in the whole world are the rural Appalachians. Very little income, if any, and this sucking off welfare and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, side note. But if you're willing to do the work, in a rural area such as this is definitely the way to go. That's a good girl. And your dogs can free range. They can roam free and wild. You don't have to walk them on leashes. Maggie's hardly ever been on a leash. She just does whatever she wants. Lives the good life. She's got a brand new Wazoo tracking bandana. Don't you, girl? Don't you, girl? So when you're exploring the creek bed here, creek bottom, you can make sure you know what animals have been on your turf. You can identify those easily. And we don't have to pick up Maggie's poop. That's another thing about living in the country that you don't have to worry about. You don't have to pick up after your dogs. One of the arguments on a previous video was that it's easier to build community in a suburbia type area because there's just a lot more people. And those people can look out for one another. And I get that. I guess that may be a possibility, but you can build that community in a rural area just like this, no problem. Just get out, start meeting people, go to local festivals and farmers markets and potlucks at the church and all that kind of stuff, and you will build that community of like-minded individuals, and it can be really, really strong. Now, the selfish individual inside of me says, stay in your city. Enjoy your suburbia. Stay there. Leave the rural areas alone, because I want it to stay rural, and the more people that leave the city and come out to the country, the less country the country becomes. The selfish individual inside me says, stay where you are. Don't come here, you urbanites. We don't want you. But the good Christian inside of me, which I don't know if I could ever be considered a good Christian, the good Christian inside of me says, go where the opportunities to prepare, provide, and be ready for disasters, man-made or natural. Be ready for those things. Can you be prepared in a city? Can you be prepared in a suburb area? Of course. It's just going to be more difficult, in my opinion, because the more people, the more problems. And I think that's just a fact. It's going to be really hard to argue with that. But you're welcome to in the comment section. That'd be great. And a lot of people watching are going to say, I can't, move out to the country. And I get that. Not everybody can just, drop what they're doing and move out to the country. Everybody can do it. You just choose not to because of a better opportunity. The work that you're doing is in the city, or your family's in the city, or whatever, and financial reasons and constraints. You can't just go out and do these things. Look, I get it. Life is full of choices. Life is full of options, and it's also full of excuses. And we can do whatever it is we choose to do. In this country where we live, we are still free to move about. For the most part, you could go wherever you want, move wherever you want. No one's going to stop you. Except you. You're the only one that's going to get in the way of you preparing for your family and doing what's necessary for your family. And if that requires you moving to a more rural area where there's some space, where you can explore the space and plant some food and be less susceptible to urban catastrophes and urban chaos, then maybe that's what you should do. But, you make your own decisions. We all have to live our lives the way that we see fit. Don't let me or anyone else dictate what you do with your life. If you think you're where you're at for a reason, if that's where God has instructed you to be, then you stay there and you work hard, you work your butt off, and you do what you need to do. But I'm very happy to live where I live. I'll tell you that. Thanks for watching, friends. Really appreciate it. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Can't wait to see you on the next one. I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch, and when disaster strikes, will you be ready? Power outages, natural disasters, economic collapse, threats can come in a lot of different forms. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you'll be able to gain the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. For pennies a day, you can gain instant access to our team of survival experts that has decades of experience under extreme conditions. They'll provide crucial information on such things as stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans. We can deliver proven techniques to help you get home, shelter in place, or bug out safely. You will receive specific, actionable plans to withstand disasters from start to finish. Don't leave your family's safety to chance. As a Survival Dispatch insider, you can face the worst with confidence. We make disaster preparedness simple and affordable. Join our community of survivors today. Visit survivaldispatch.com to get started.